The SUV stopped at the edge of the snow-covered forest. Kevin Brennan stepped out, grabbed a thin camping tent from the trunk, and dropped it at his father's feet. "Just for a few days, Dad. Someone will come for you." Walter reached for his son's arm. "Kevin, please. Your mother needs her medication. She doesn't understand what's happening." The door slammed shut. The engine roared, and two elderly people stood alone in the freezing cold, watching their own child drive away without looking back. 1 mile south, a German shepherd named Titan lifted his head and began to growl. He smelled death coming. "Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit subscribe so you never miss another tale of loyalty, courage, and heart. Your support truly means the world." Now let me tell you about the man who found them, and why he was the only one who could. Jack Morrison hadn't slept through the night in 3 years. The nightmares always came at the same time. 0347, the exact moment the IED had detonated in Kandahar province, turning his world into fire and screaming and the taste of blood. Tonight was no different. He woke, gasping, hands clutching sheets that were soaked with sweat, heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. "Easy." He forced the word through clenched teeth. "You're home. You're safe. You're—" A cold nose pressed against his palm. Titan. The 8-year-old German shepherd had materialized beside the bed, his dark brown eyes fixed on Jack's face with an intensity that cut through the panic. The dog didn't whine, didn't bark. He simply pressed his body against Jack's legs, a solid weight of warmth and presence that said, "I'm here. I've got you. We survived this before. We'll survive it again." Jack's hand found Titan's head fingers, sinking into the familiar black and tan fur. "Good boy." His voice was raw. "Good boy." They stayed that way for a long time, man and dog survivor and savior, breathing together in the darkness, until Jack's heart finally slowed. When he could trust his legs, Jack stood and walked to the window. The Blue Ridge Mountains stretched before him silent and snow-covered, indifferent to human suffering. 3 years since he'd left the Navy. 3 years since the ambush that killed his entire team. 3 years of this cabin, this isolation, this careful distance from a world that no longer made sense. Titan pressed against his leg. "I know, buddy." Jack scratched behind the dog's scarred ear, the one that had been torn by shrapnel from the same explosion that had killed 8 men. Another beautiful day in paradise. The sarcasm was bitter, but it was better than silence. They had their routine. Coffee first, strong and black, the only luxury Jack allowed himself. Then patrol 3 miles through the forest, checking the trails, looking for hikers in trouble, doing the only job he could still stomach. He wasn't officially a ranger. He was a volunteer, unpaid, answering to no one. The Forest Service let him do it because he was good at it, because he never complained, and because having a former Navy SEAL walking the trails made everyone feel safer. Jack didn't feel safe. He hadn't felt safe since Kandahar, but he could pretend. "Come on." He grabbed his heavy jacket and headed for the door. "Let's see what the world's broken today." The morning patrol started like every other morning. Jack moved through the forest with the silent efficiency of a man who had spent 18 years learning to be invisible. His boots barely disturbed the snow. His breath clouded in the cold air. His eyes scanned constantly, left, right, ahead, behind a habit that would never break. Titan ranged ahead, nose to the ground, tail up. The dog was pure focus, pure purpose. He'd been trained to detect explosives, track human scent, and identify threats before they materialized. Now he used those skills to find lost hikers and injured animals. It was a waste of his training, but it was better than the alternative. "Anything," Jack called softly. Titan's ears swiveled, but he didn't stop moving. Nothing yet. They continued along the ridge trail, the same route they walked every day. Jack knew every tree, every rock, every spot where the snow drifted deep enough to swallow a careless step. He was thinking about nothing. The blessed emptiness that came with physical movement when his radio crackled. "Base to Morrison, you copy." Jack unclipped the radio from his belt. "Morrison here, go ahead." "Got a report of an abandoned vehicle on the old logging road. Black SUV, no plates visible. Probably nothing, but figured you'd want to know." "Copy that. I'll check it out." "Thanks, Jack. Stay warm out there." The radio went silent. Jack stared at it for a moment, then clipped it back to his belt. The old logging road was 2 miles east, a detour, but not a major one. Probably just some idiot who'd gotten stuck in the snow and walked out for help. Probably nothing. But Titan had stopped moving. "What is it, boy?" The dog stood rigid, his entire body pointing east. His nose worked the air. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Jack felt the hair on his arms stand up. In 8 years of working together, Titan had only made that sound a handful of times. Each time someone had been in danger. "What do you smell?" Titan looked back at Jack, then forward again. His message was clear. "Follow me. Now. Go." The dog took off running. Jack followed. They moved fast through the trees. Titan's black and tan form weaving between trunks with an urgency Jack had only seen in combat. The dog wasn't tracking, he was hunting. Something had triggered every protective instinct in his body. "Titan, slow down." The dog didn't slow down. If anything, he accelerated. Jack pushed harder, his legs burning his lungs, protesting the cold air. He was 42 years old and in excellent shape, but Titan was running like the hounds of hell were chasing him, or like he was racing death. They burst through a clearing and Titan finally stopped. Jack saw it immediately. A tent. Small, thin, completely inadequate for the conditions. Snow had piled against its sides, and the fabric sagged under the weight. No fire. No supplies. No sign of preparation for survival. Just a tent dropped in the middle of nowhere like garbage. "Hello," Jack called out. "Is anyone there?" No response. Titan was already at the tent entrance, pawing at the zipper, whining with desperate intensity. Jack pulled the zipper open, and his heart stopped. 2 people lay inside, curled together for warmth. An elderly man, late 70s, white hair, weathered face, was wrapped around a smaller woman, shielding her with his own body. His eyes were closed. His skin was gray. The woman wasn't moving at all. "Jesus Christ!" Jack dropped to his knees and pressed 2 fingers against the man's neck. A pulse. Weak, thready, but there. Sir, can you hear me?" The man's eyes fluttered open. They were clouded with confusion and cold, but there was still life in them. "Who?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Who are you?" "My name is Jack. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me your name?" "Walter." The man's hand tightened around the woman. "My wife. Eleanor. Please. Help her first." Jack checked Eleanor's pulse, even weaker than Walter's. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was shallow. "How long have you been out here?" Walter's face crumpled. 5 days. Maybe more. I lost count." 5 days. In these temperatures, with no supplies, no fire, no proper shelter, 5 days should have killed them. "Who left you here, Walter?" The old man's eyes filled with tears. "Our son." Jack felt something crack inside his chest. "He said someone would come." Walter continued, his voice breaking. "He said it was just for a little while. He said—" He couldn't finish. Titan had pushed past Jack and was lying against Eleanor, pressing his warm body against her trembling form. The dog's eyes never left her face. "Okay." Jack's voice was steady, even though his hands wanted to shake. "Okay, Walter. I'm going to get you both out of here. But I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?" "I'm not leaving her." "You're not leaving her. We're all going together." Jack pulled off his insulated jacket and wrapped it around Eleanor. She was so thin, so fragile, like a bird that had been broken by the wind. "Eleanor, Mrs. Brennan, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. For a moment they were completely clear, sharp, and intelligent and aware. "You came," she whispered. "I told Walter someone would come." "Yes, ma'am, I came. God sent you." A single tear slid down her cheek. "He sent you, and this beautiful dog." She reached out and touched Titan's head. The dog pressed closer, and something passed between them, a connection that Jack couldn't explain and didn't need to. "Rest now," Jack said. "Save your strength. We've got a long walk ahead." Eleanor's eyes drifted closed, but she was smiling. Jack tried his radio. Nothing but static. The storm had knocked out the repeaters, and they were too far from the ranger station for direct communication. They were on their own. "Walter, can you walk?" "I can try." "Trying's not good enough. I need you to tell me the truth." The old man's jaw tightened with the stubborn pride of a generation that didn't admit weakness. "I built houses for 50 years with these hands. I can walk a few miles." "Good." Jack started assessing their situation. No way he could carry both of them. The stretcher he could improvise would only work for Eleanor. Walter would have to make it on his own feet. "We're going to move fast," Jack said. "The ranger station is about 4 miles northeast. There's heat there, communication, medical supplies. But we need to go now before this storm gets worse." "What about Kevin?" Jack stopped. "What about him? He might come back. He might be looking for us." The desperate hope in Walter's voice was almost too painful to bear. "Walter." Jack knelt so he was eye level with the old man. "Listen to me very carefully. Your son left you here 5 days ago. He hasn't come back. He isn't coming back." "You don't know that." "I know that anyone who wanted you found would have called search and rescue. I know that anyone who made a mistake would have tried to fix it. And I know that you and your wife are going to die out here if we don't move right now." Walter's face collapsed. "He was such a good boy once. When he was young, he used to help me build birdhouses. He had such careful hands." "I believe you." Jack's voice softened. "But the boy he was isn't the man he became. And right now the only thing that matters is getting you and Eleanor to safety." "He took everything." Walter's voice cracked. "Our house, our savings. He said he'd invest it for us. He said we'd be taken care of. We'll deal with that later. Right now. He left us nothing." The old man was crying now, tears freezing on his weathered cheeks. 50 years I worked. 50 years I built homes for other families. And my own son left us with nothing but a tent." Jack didn't have words for that. What words could possibly address the betrayal of a child who had abandoned his parents to die? Instead, he did what he did best. He got to work. The stretcher was crude, but functional tent poles lashed together with paracord, the tent fabric stretched between them to create a platform. Jack tested it twice before he was satisfied it would hold Eleanor's weight. "Help me lift her," he told Walter. Together they moved Eleanor onto the stretcher. She weighed almost nothing, 90 pounds of fragile bones and fading life. Titan never left her side, positioning himself to walk alongside her as if he'd been trained for exactly this purpose. Maybe he had been. Dogs understood things humans didn't. "Can you keep pace?" Jack asked Walter. The old man nodded, but Jack could see the truth in his eyes. 5 days of cold and hunger and fear had taken their toll. Walter was running on nothing but love and stubbornness. It would have to be enough. "Stay behind me. Step where I step. If you feel yourself falling, grab onto Titan. He'll steady you. The dog, he's held up men twice your size. Trust him." They started moving. The first mile was brutal. Jack carried the stretcher's front end, walking backward through the snow so he could keep his eyes on Eleanor. Walter stumbled along behind, his breathing ragged, his steps unsteady. Titan ranged between them, checking on Eleanor, then circling back to nudge Walter forward. "Tell me about her," Jack said, partly to keep Walter conscious, and partly because he needed to understand. "Tell me about Eleanor." Walter's face softened despite the cold. "She was a teacher, first grade. 40 years she taught those children. 40 years of ABCs and counting to 10 and tying shoelaces." He stumbled, caught himself. She remembered every single one of them, every name, every face. Even now, when she forgets what day it is, she remembers her students. "She has Alzheimer's. Early stages. Some days are good. Some days—" Walter's voice broke. "Some days she doesn't know who I am. But I never leave her side. Not once in 55 years. 55 years of marriage. 55 years of loving the same woman every single day." Walter looked at Eleanor's still face. "And I'll love her for 55 more if God gives me the chance." Jack felt something shift in his chest. He'd never had that. Never let himself get close enough to anyone to have that. After Kandahar, he'd convinced himself that connection was weakness, that loving someone just meant losing them eventually. But watching Walter, this 78-year-old man, half dead from exposure, still fighting to protect the woman he loved, Jack wondered if he'd been wrong. Maybe connection wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the only thing worth surviving for. "Keep talking," Jack said. "Tell me how you met." 1968. I was building houses in Charlotte. She walked into the hardware store while I was buying nails. Walter's laugh was weak but genuine. She asked me if I knew where the paint was. I told her I'd show her, and then I spent 2 hours helping her pick colors for her classroom. "Did you ever buy those nails?" "Forgot all about them." Walter smiled through cracked lips. "I went back the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, I'd bought enough paint to cover the entire school." "Did she notice?" "She noticed." Walter's eyes grew distant with memory. "She said, 'You know there's a diner down the street. You could just ask me to dinner instead of buying all this paint.'" "What did you say?" "I said, 'Ma'am, I've been trying to figure out how to ask you that for 5 days.'" And she laughed. Lord, that laugh. Walter's voice cracked. "I've spent 55 years trying to make her laugh like that again." Eleanor stirred on the stretcher. Her eyes opened, clouded with confusion. "Walter, where are we? I don't remember." Walter pushed forward, taking her hand despite his own exhaustion. "We're going home, sweetheart. This nice man is helping us. We're going to be okay." "Is this heaven?" "Not yet." Walter squeezed her fingers. "Not for a long time yet." Eleanor's eyes found Titan, who had positioned himself alongside the stretcher. "What a beautiful dog." Her voice was dreamy, disconnected. "He looks like the dog my father had when I was a little girl." "His name is Titan," Jack said. "He's going to stay with you the whole way." "Titan." Eleanor smiled. "That's a strong name. He must be very brave." "The bravest dog I've ever known." Eleanor's hand reached out and Titan pressed his head into her palm. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." Her eyes closed again, but she was still breathing. For now, that was enough. The second mile nearly broke them. The storm had intensified, wind cutting through their layers like knives. Snow fell thick and fast, obscuring the trail Jack had walked 1,000 times. His arms screamed from carrying the stretcher. His lungs burned from the cold air, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. Not when 2 lives depended on him reaching that ranger station. "Walter, you still with me?" No response. Jack stopped and turned. Walter had fallen to his knees in the snow, his face gray, his breathing shallow. "Walter!" Jack set down the stretcher and ran back. Titan was already there, pressing against the old man, trying to keep him warm. "I'm sorry." Walter's voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry, I just need a minute." "You don't have a minute." Jack grabbed Walter's arm and hauled him upright. "You die out here, your wife dies too. Is that what you want?" "No." "Then move." I can't. You can. Jack's voice was fierce. You built houses for 50 years. You raised a family. You loved a woman for 5.5 decades. You didn't do all that just to die in the snow. My son left us to die. I know, and that's the worst thing I've ever heard. But you know what's worse than that. What? Letting him win. Jack grabbed Walter's shoulders. He wanted you dead. He wanted you gone. And if you give up now, he gets exactly what he wanted. Something sparked in Walter's eyes. That son of a bitch. There you go. That ungrateful, selfish son of a bitch. Now you're talking. Walter straightened his jaw setting with stubborn fury. I'm not dying out here. Not like this. Not because of him. Damn right you're not. Jack handed him the front of the stretcher. You take this end. I'll push from behind. We do this together. Together. They started moving again. This time Walter didn't stumble. The ranger station appeared through the trees like a mirage. Jack had never been so happy to see a building in his life. His arms had gone numb an hour ago. His legs were moving on pure muscle memory. Even Titan was struggling, his pace slower, his breathing heavier. But they had made it. We're here, Jack gasped. Walter, we made it. Walter didn't respond. He was staring at the station with tears streaming down his face. I didn't think... His voice broke. I didn't think we'd survive. Neither did I. Jack was too exhausted to lie. But we did. Come on, let's get inside. He pushed open the door and felt the blessed warmth hit his face. The backup generator was running the heater, humming softly. Someone had stocked the station recently. There were blankets on the cot, canned food in the cabinet, medical supplies in the first aid kit. Everything they needed. Everything they'd been denied. Jack lifted Eleanor from the stretcher and placed her gently on the cot. Her skin was still cold, but her breathing had steadied during the last mile. Titan immediately jumped up beside her, curling his body around hers, refusing to leave. Get those wet clothes off, Jack told Walter. Wrap yourself in blankets, drink this. He poured warm water from the thermos he'd heated on the wood stove. Walter's hands shook as he took the cup. Why? He asked suddenly. Why what? Why did you help us? You don't know us. You have no reason to. I have every reason. But I was a soldier. Jack's voice was quiet. I spent 18 years protecting people. Then I came home and convinced myself that I couldn't protect anyone anymore. He looked at Eleanor, at Titan's devoted vigil, at Walter's weathered face. You proved me wrong. Walter was silent for a long moment. You lost people, he said finally. Over there. It wasn't a question. 8 men. Jack's jaw tightened. My entire team. I should have died with them. But you didn't. No. Titan dragged me out of the wreckage. I don't know how. The medics said I should have bled out in 2 minutes. But he wouldn't let go. They both looked at the dog, who was watching Eleanor's face with unwavering attention. Maybe that's why, Walter said softly. Why what? Why you survived. Why you're here. The old man's eyes were wet, but clear. Maybe you were supposed to save us. Maybe this is what all that pain was leading to. Jack wanted to dismiss it. Wanted to say that survival was random, meaningless, that there was no grand plan or purpose. But watching Titan guard Eleanor with the same fierce devotion he'd shown in Kandahar, Jack wondered if Walter might be right. Maybe some things weren't coincidence. Maybe some things were fate. The radio crackled to life. Base to Morrison. Jack, you copy? Jack grabbed the radio with numb fingers. Morrison here. I've got 2 civilians in critical condition at the ranger station. Elderly couple, severe hypothermia, possible cardiac distress. I need emergency evac immediately. Copy that, Jack. Storm's breaking up. We can get a helicopter to you within the hour. Hang tight. Copy. Morrison out. He set down the radio and looked at Walter. Help is coming. Thank God. Don't thank God yet. Jack knelt beside Eleanor and checked her pulse. Still weak, but stronger than before. She's going to need hospital care. Real doctors, real medicine. She'll make it. Walter's voice held absolute certainty. She's the strongest person I know. As if hearing her name, Eleanor's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were clear, perfectly, brilliantly clear. Walter, I'm here, sweetheart. We made it. We made it. Eleanor's hand found Titan's fur, her fingers sinking into his coat. And the dog? He's here too. He never left your side. I knew he wouldn't. Eleanor smiled weakly. Dogs know things. They know who needs them. She looked at Jack. You needed him too, didn't you? This beautiful dog. Jack couldn't speak. It's okay. Eleanor continued, her voice fading, but gentle. We all need someone to pull us out of the dark. That's not weakness. That's love. Her eyes closed, but she was still smiling. And somewhere in the distance the sound of helicopter blades began cutting through the mountain air. Help was coming. They had survived. But as Jack looked at Walter, at this broken man who had been betrayed by his own blood, he knew that survival was only the beginning. The real fight was just starting. And somewhere out there, Kevin Brennan was about to learn that some crimes can't stay buried in the snow. The helicopter touched down at Blue Ridge Regional Hospital at 1847 hours. Jack hadn't left Eleanor's side during the entire flight. Neither had Titan. The medical team had tried to remove the dog, but one look from Jack had silenced their protests. He stays with her, Jack said. Non-negotiable. They didn't argue again. Walter held Eleanor's hand as they wheeled her through the emergency entrance, his weathered face a mask of desperate hope and crushing fear. Sir, you need to let us work. A nurse tried to guide him toward the waiting room. I'm not leaving her. Sir, 55 years. Walter's voice cracked. 55 years I've slept beside that woman. I'm not leaving her now. Jack stepped forward. Let him stay. He won't interfere. The nurse looked at Jack's bearing, at the steel in his eyes, and nodded. Fine, but he stays out of the way. They took Eleanor into the trauma bay. Monitors beeped. Voices called out vitals. Hands moved with practiced urgency. Jack watched from the doorway, Titan pressed against his legs, and waited. This was the part he hated. The helpless part. The part where all his training, all his strength, all his determination meant nothing. Eleanor's life was in someone else's hands now. How bad is it? Walter asked, his voice small. I don't know. Will she? I don't know, Walter. Jack's honesty was brutal but necessary. But she's a fighter. You said so yourself. She is. Walter's hands trembled. Strongest woman I ever knew. Then believe that. Hold on to it. What if it's not enough? Jack didn't have an answer. Some questions didn't have answers. The doctor emerged 2 hours later. Her name was Dr. Patricia Chen, and her face gave nothing away as she approached them. Jack had seen that expression before on medics who had lost patience, on surgeons who had done everything possible and still failed. Mr. Brennan. Walter stood so fast he nearly collapsed. Jack caught his arm. Your wife is stable. The words hit Walter like a physical force. His knees buckled, and Jack had to hold him upright. She's going to make it. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. She's severely dehydrated and hypothermic. Her core temperature was dangerously low when she arrived. Another few hours. Dr. Chen paused. Frankly, it's remarkable either of you survived. Can I see her? In a moment. But first I need to understand what happened. Dr. Chen's eyes sharpened. The paramedics said you were found in a tent in the forest, with no supplies, no way to call for help. Walter's face crumpled. Our son, he said quietly. Our son left us there. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Left you there? For how long? 5 days, maybe more. 5 days. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Mr. Brennan, I'm required to report suspected cases of elder abuse. What you're describing, do what you have to do. Walter's voice was hollow. I'm tired of protecting him. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. I'm going to call the sheriff, and I'm going to keep you both here for observation. Is there anyone else we should contact? Other family members? We have a daughter, Linda. She lives in California. I'll need her contact information. Walter provided it mechanically, like a man who had stopped feeling anything at all. Jack watched the exchange and felt his jaw tighten. This was only the beginning. The questions, the investigations, the painful unraveling of a family's darkest secrets, it would get worse before it got better. Much worse. Can I see my wife now? Walter asked. Follow me. They walked together down the sterile hospital corridor, an old man who had lost everything except the woman he loved, and a soldier who understood loss better than most. Titan walked between them, his presence a silent comfort. Some bonds didn't need words. Eleanor was awake when they entered the room. Her eyes were clear, one of her good moments, Jack realized, and they lit up when she saw Walter. There you are. Her voice was weak but warm. I was starting to think you'd gotten lost. Walter rushed to her side and took her hand. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I know. Eleanor smiled. You're always here. She noticed Jack and Titan standing by the door. And you brought our guardian angel. Come closer, young man. Let me see you properly. Jack approached the bed, Titan at his heels. You saved our lives, Eleanor said simply. Both of you. Titan did most of the work. Nonsense. He led you to us, but you made the choice to follow. That's not nothing. Eleanor's hand reached out, and Titan pressed his head into her palm. What's your name, dear? Your real name? Jack. Jack Morrison. Jack. She repeated it like she was committing it to memory. That's a good, strong name. My father was a Jack. Eleanor. Walter said gently. You should rest. I've been resting for 5 days. Her voice sharpened with sudden clarity. What I need to do is tell the truth. The truth can wait. No, it can't. Eleanor's grip on Titan's fur tightened. Kevin needs to answer for what he did, not just to us, to everyone. Jack stepped closer. What do you mean, everyone? Eleanor met his eyes, and in them, Jack saw the fierce intelligence of a woman who had taught children for 40 years. We're not the only ones, she said quietly. Kevin didn't just steal from us. He's been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Elderly people mostly. People who trusted him with their retirement savings. Walter's face went white. Eleanor, how do you know this? Because I'm not as confused as everyone thinks I am. Her voice was bitter. I found the documents, Walter, months ago. I tried to tell you, but you thought I was having one of my episodes. Why didn't you? Because he's our son. Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. Because I wanted to be wrong. Because I kept hoping he would stop, that he would give the money back, that the boy I raised would remember who he was supposed to be. But he didn't. No, he didn't. Eleanor's jaw set. And when I confronted him, when I told him I knew, that's when he decided we needed to disappear. The words landed like bombs in the quiet hospital room. Jack felt his hands curl into fists. He didn't just abandon you because you were inconvenient, he said slowly. He abandoned you because you were witnesses. Yes. He was trying to silence you. Yes. That's not elder abuse. Jack's voice was cold. That's attempted murder. Eleanor nodded slowly. I know. The door opened, and Sheriff Thomas Wade entered. He was a big man, mid-50s, with the weathered face of someone who had spent decades dealing with humanity's worst impulses. His eyes swept the room, landing on Jack, with the assessment of one veteran recognizing another. Sheriff Wade. He didn't offer his hand. I understand we have a situation. That's one word for it, Jack said. I've spoken with Dr. Chen. She gave me the basics. Wade pulled out a notebook. But I need to hear it from you, Mr. Brennan. From the beginning. Walter looked at Eleanor. She nodded. Tell him everything, Walter. It's time. Walter took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his soul. Our son Kevin is a real estate developer, or that's what he told us. 5 years ago, he came to us with an investment opportunity. Said he could double our retirement savings in 2 years. And you believed him. He's my son. Walter's voice cracked. I trusted him. What happened next? We gave him everything, our savings, our house. He said he'd put it in a trust that we'd be taken care of forever. Walter laughed bitterly. Instead, he took out a reverse mortgage without telling us. He drained every account, and when the money was gone, he left you in the forest. He said it was just temporary. He said someone would come for us. Walter's face contorted with pain. But no one came. For 5 days, no one came. Wade wrote steadily, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Brennan, your husband mentioned, you have additional information. Eleanor gathered herself. Kevin has been stealing from elderly people for years. I have names, addresses, amounts. Her voice strengthened. There's a file in our storage unit assuming he hasn't cleaned it out. Bank statements, emails, everything I could gather before... Before what? Before my mind started going. Eleanor touched her temple. Some days I forget what year it is. But I never forgot that file. I never forgot what my son became. Wade looked at Jack. And you? How do you fit into this? I'm a volunteer ranger. I found them during a routine patrol. Former military. Navy SEAL. 18 years. Wade nodded slowly. I've heard of you. Morrison, right? The one who lives up on the ridge with the dog. That's me. You did good work out there. Most people would have walked past that tent. I'm not most people. Wade closed his notebook. I'm going to need formal statements from all of you, and I'm going to need that storage unit location. He looked at Eleanor. If what you're saying is true, this is bigger than one family. This is a criminal enterprise. I know what it is. Eleanor's voice was steel. That's why I'm telling you. Kevin needs to be stopped before he destroys anyone else. We'll stop him. Wade headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. Has anyone contacted Kevin? Does he know you survived? Walter and Eleanor exchanged looks. No, Walter said. We don't have phones. He took them. Good. Let's keep it that way for now. Wade's jaw tightened. I want to see his face when he finds out his parents are still alive. I want to see what kind of man runs when he realizes his crime didn't stay buried. He left. The room fell silent. Jack looked at the elderly couple, at their lined faces, their trembling hands, their eyes that held 55 years of love and 5 days of betrayal. You should rest, he said quietly. Will you stay? Eleanor asked. Just for a little while. I'll stay as long as you need. Titan jumped onto the bed and curled up against Eleanor's side. She smiled and stroked his fur. He reminds me of someone, she murmured. Someone who never gives up. Who... Eleanor's eyes met Jack's. You. Rachel Morgan arrived at the hospital at 2300 hours. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her editor had sent her to cover a city council meeting, which had ended an hour ago with no story worth telling. But Rachel had heard the ambulance dispatch on her scanner. Elderly couple, hypothermia, possible abuse. Something about those words had pulled at her. Maybe because her own mother had died in a nursing home 3 years ago. Neglected. Forgotten. Alone. Rachel had promised herself she would never let that happen to anyone else if she could help it. Excuse me. She approached the nurse's station with her most disarming smile. I'm looking for information about the elderly couple brought in earlier. The ones from the forest. The nurse looked at her suspiciously. Are you family? I'm a journalist. Then you'll have to wait for an official statement. I'm not looking for a statement. I'm looking for the truth. Rachel leaned closer. I heard they were abandoned by their own son. Is that true? The nurse's expression flickered. I can't comment on... Look, I'm not trying to exploit anyone. My mother died because no one was paying attention, because the people who were supposed to care looked the other way. Rachel's voice cracked with genuine emotion. If there's a story here, a story that could help other people, I need to tell it. The nurse was quiet for a long moment. Room 217, she said finally. But if anyone asks, you didn't hear it from me. Thank you. Rachel walked down the corridor, her heart beating faster with every step. She didn't know what she would find. Didn't know if the family would even talk to her. But she knew she had to try. She stopped outside room 217 and knocked softly. Come in. A male voice, not elderly. Rachel pushed open the door and found herself face to face with the most intense pair of blue eyes she had ever seen. Jack Morrison. He stood between her and the hospital bed, his body positioned like a guard dog protecting its pack. Behind him, an elderly couple lay sleeping, an actual dog curled between them. Who are you? Jack's voice was flat, dangerous. Rachel Morgan. I'm a journalist. Then you can leave. Please. Rachel held up her hands. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to help. Help how? By telling their story. Rachel stepped closer, ignoring every instinct that told her to back away from this man. I heard what happened, what their son did. If that's true, people need to know. Why? Because this happens every day. Rachel's voice broke. Elderly people abandoned, abused, forgotten. And no one talks about it because it's uncomfortable. Because we don't want to believe that children could do this to their parents. Jack studied her for a long moment. Your mother, he said quietly. Something happened to her. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. She died in a nursing home. They said it was natural causes, but I saw the bruises. I saw how thin she was. I saw what neglect looks like. She wiped her face. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can help save someone else. Jack's posture shifted, just slightly, just enough. They're sleeping now, he said. But when they wake up, I'll ask if they want to talk to you. That's all I'm asking. One condition. Jack's eyes bored into hers. You don't turn them into a spectacle. You don't sensationalize their pain. You tell the truth, the whole truth, and you treat them with dignity. I promise. If you break that promise... Jack didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Kevin Brennan saw the news at 0600. He was sitting in his home office, nursing his third cup of coffee, trying to figure out how to explain to his wife why they needed to sell the beach house immediately. The TV was on in the background, white noise, mostly, until a familiar word cut through his distraction. Elderly couple found in the Blue Ridge Mountains after being abandoned in a tent for 5 days. The couple, whose names have not been released, were discovered by a former Navy SEAL and his service dog during a routine patrol. Kevin's coffee cup slipped from his fingers. No, that wasn't possible. They should be dead. Authorities are investigating the circumstances of the abandonment, with sources indicating that family members may be responsible. Kevin's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he answered anyway. Mr. Brennan. A woman's voice, professional, cold. This is Sheriff Wade from Pinewood. I need you to come down to the station for questioning. Kevin's mouth went dry. Questioning about what? I think you know what. The line went dead. Kevin sat frozen, his mind racing through options. He could run. He had money stashed away, not enough, never enough, but maybe enough to disappear. Or he could play this smart. His parents were confused. His mother had Alzheimer's. Who would believe them over him? He just needed to get there first, control the narrative, explain that it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been planning to pick them up, that the storm had delayed him. Yes, that was the play. Kevin Brennan grabbed his keys and headed for his car. He would fix this. He always fixed everything. The hospital was surrounded by news vans when Kevin arrived. Rachel Morgan's story had gone viral overnight. Not the full story, she was still gathering information, but enough to attract attention. Enough to make elderly couple abandoned by son the top trending topic on social media. Comments flooded every platform. How could anyone do this to their own parents? This monster deserves to rot in prison. Where is the son? Someone needs to make him pay. Kevin saw the crowds and felt his stomach drop. This was worse than he'd imagined. Much worse. He parked in the back lot and made his way inside through a service entrance. His hands were shaking. His heart was racing. But he forced himself to walk normally, to look like a concerned son rushing to see his parents. "Excuse me." He approached the front desk. "I'm looking for Walter and Eleanor Brennan. They're my parents." The receptionist's eyes widened with recognition. "Just a moment, sir." She picked up the phone and spoke quietly. Kevin couldn't hear what she said, but he didn't like the way she kept glancing at him. "Someone will be right with you. I'd like to see my parents now." "Sir, you need to wait. They're my parents." Kevin's voice rose. "I have every right to. Mr. Brennan." Sheriff Wade emerged from a side corridor flanked by 2 deputies. "Sheriff." Kevin forced a smile. "Thank God, I've been so worried. When I heard what happened..." "Save it." Wade's voice was ice. "We know what you did." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Wade stepped closer. "You didn't drive your parents to the middle of nowhere and leave them with a camping tent and no supplies." "That's not... I was going to come back." "After 5 days." The storm cleared 3 days ago, Mr. Brennan." Wade's eyes were merciless. "You had 3 days to pick them up, 3 days to call for help, 3 days to do anything except leave them to die." "I didn't." "Kevin." The voice came from behind him. Kevin turned. Walter Brennan stood in the corridor, supported by Jack Morrison on one side and Titan on the other. His father looked older than Kevin remembered, older and harder, and filled with a quiet fury that Kevin had never seen before. "Dad." Kevin's voice cracked. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I never meant..." "Don't." Walter's word cut like a knife. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I wasn't lying. I was going to come back. You left us to die." Walter's voice was steady, but tears streamed down his face. "You left your mother, the woman who gave you life, who raised you, who loved you more than anything. You left her in the snow to die. Dad, you stole everything we had, our home, our savings. 50 years of work gone." Walter took a shaking breath. "I could forgive you for that. Money is just money. Then... But I will never forgive you for what you did to Eleanor." Walter's voice broke. "She woke up every night asking where you were, asking when you were coming back. And I had to lie to her, Kevin. I had to tell her you were on your way, that you hadn't abandoned us, that her son still loved her." Kevin's face crumpled. "I do love her. I do love both of you." "Love." Walter laughed bitterly. "You don't know what love is. Love doesn't leave. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't look at the people who gave you everything and decide they're worth less than your debts. I was desperate. So were we." Walter's voice dropped to a whisper. "For 5 days we were desperate. Your mother stopped eating on day 3 because she wanted to make sure I had enough. She was willing to die so I could live." Kevin's face went white. "That's love, Kevin. That's what love looks like." Walter turned away. "You should have learned it from us, but somewhere along the way you forgot." Dad, please. Don't. Walter didn't look back. Don't call me that. Not anymore. He walked away, supported by Jack and followed by Titan. Kevin stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. Sheriff Wade stepped forward. Kevin Brennan, you're under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and attempted murder. The handcuffs clicked around Kevin's wrists. You have the right to remain silent. But Kevin wasn't listening. He was watching his father disappear down the corridor. Watching the family he had destroyed walk away without looking back. And realizing too late that some things couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. Some sins followed you forever. That night, Jack sat alone in the hospital chapel. Titan lay at his feet, a warm presence in the cold space. The dog hadn't left Jack's side since they'd returned from the confrontation with Kevin. I don't know why I'm here, Jack said to no one. I haven't prayed in years. Titan's tail thumped once. I saw things over there, boy. Things that made me wonder if anyone was listening at all. Jack's voice dropped. When my team died, I screamed for help. I begged, and no one came. The chapel was silent. But you came. Jack reached down and scratched Titan's ears. You pulled me out of that wreckage. You kept me alive. Titan pressed closer. And then you led me to them. Two people who needed help who had no one else. Jack's voice cracked. Maybe that's not coincidence. Maybe there's something more. There is. Jack turned. Eleanor stood in the doorway, leaning on a walker, her hospital gown too big for her thin frame. Mrs. Brennan, you should be in bed. I've been in bed for days. She shuffled forward. I wanted to find you, to say thank you properly. You've already thanked me. Not for saving my life. Eleanor lowered herself onto the pew beside him. For giving my husband hope. I don't understand. When Kevin left us in that forest, something broke in Walter. Not his body, his spirit. Eleanor's eyes glistened. He stopped believing that good people existed. He stopped believing that anyone would care. And now? Now he believes again. Eleanor touched Jack's hand. Because of you. Because you didn't walk past. Because you chose to help strangers who had nothing to offer you. Jack looked away. I'm not a good person, Mrs. Brennan. I've done things... I know. Her voice was gentle. I can see it in your eyes. The weight you carry. Then you know I don't deserve gratitude. I know nothing of the sort. Eleanor squeezed his hand. You think the pain you've caused erases the good you've done. You think the lives you've taken outweigh the lives you've saved. I don't know what I think anymore. Then let me tell you what I know. Eleanor's voice strengthened. I've lived 75 years. I've seen people at their best and their worst. And I know that the measure of a person isn't their past, it's what they choose to do next. Jack was silent. You chose to follow your dog into the storm. You chose to carry us out of the forest. You chose to stand between us and the son who betrayed us. Eleanor smiled. Those choices matter, Jack. They matter more than anything you've done before. How can you be sure? Because God doesn't waste pain. Eleanor looked at the cross above the altar. Everything you've suffered, everything you've lost, it led you here, to us, to this moment. You believe that. I have to. Eleanor's voice broke. I have to believe that my son's betrayal wasn't meaningless, that some good can come from the worst thing that ever happened to us. Jack looked at Titan, who was watching Eleanor with his calm, knowing eyes. He led me to you, Jack said quietly. I didn't even know where he was going. I just followed. Of course you did, Eleanor smiled. That's what faith is, Jack. Following when you can't see the path. Trusting when you don't understand why. I'm not sure I have faith. You have a dog who refused to let you die. You have instincts that led you to save two strangers. You have a heart that keeps choosing good even when it hurts." Eleanor stood slowly. "That's faith, dear, even if you call it something else." She touched his cheek with a trembling hand. "Thank you, Jack Morrison, for everything." She shuffled back toward the door. "Mrs. Brennan." She turned. "I'll stay," Jack said. "As long as you need, I'll stay." Eleanor smiled a real smile full of warmth and gratitude and something that looked like peace. "I know you will." She disappeared down the corridor. Jack sat alone in the chapel Titan at his feet and felt something shift in his chest. Not healing. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Maybe the first step on a very long road. "Come on, boy." Jack stood. "Let's go check on them." Titan rose and followed. Together, they walked back into the light. Rachel Morgan's video changed everything. She had filmed it simply, no dramatic music, no sensational editing. Just Eleanor and Walter sitting side by side in their hospital room, holding hands, telling their story in their own words. Eleanor spoke first. "My son drove us into the forest on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just finished making his favorite pot roast the night before. I thought he was taking us for a drive. He used to do that when he was young, Sunday drives through the mountains. I thought maybe—" Her voice broke. "I thought maybe he was trying to reconnect." Walter took over. He stopped the car and said there was a beautiful view he wanted to show us, asked us to get out. Then he opened the trunk and dropped a tent on the ground. "What did you say?" Rachel's voice was gentle off camera. "I said, Kevin, what is this? What are you doing?" Walter's jaw tightened. "He said it was just for a little while, said someone would come for us, said we'd be fine. And then he drove away." Walter's voice cracked. "He didn't even say goodbye. He just drove away." The video had been posted at midnight. By morning, it had 3 million views. By afternoon, it had 10 million. By evening, it was everywhere. News stations picked it up. Talk shows discussed it. Social media exploded with rage and grief, and a question that seemed to echo across the entire country. How could anyone do this to their own parents? Jack watched the numbers climb from the hospital waiting room, Titan, lying at his feet. "This is getting out of control," he said to no one in particular. "Is that a bad thing?" Sheriff Wade had appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered one to Jack. "I don't know." Jack took the coffee. "The attention could help. Or it could make everything worse." "It's already making things worse." Wade sat down heavily. "For Kevin Brennan, at least." "What do you mean?" "My office has been flooded with calls all day. Former clients of his. Elderly people who gave him money and never saw it again." Wade's voice hardened. "Eleanor was right. He was running a Ponzi scheme. We've identified at least 30 victims so far, and that number's climbing." "How much money?" "Millions. Maybe tens of millions." Wade shook his head. "This guy was a predator, Jack. He specifically targeted elderly people with dementia or cognitive decline, people who couldn't track their finances properly. He'd convince them to invest, then drain their accounts dry." Jack felt his stomach turn. And when his parents found out, he tried to silence them. Permanently. Wade finished his coffee. "We've upgraded the charges. He's looking at multiple counts of fraud, elder abuse, and attempted murder. If convicted, he'll never see the outside of a prison again." "Good. There's more." Wade pulled out his phone. "We found the storage unit Eleanor mentioned. The documents she gathered, bank records, emails, victim lists. It's all there." She was building a case. She was protecting people. Wade's voice softened with unexpected respect. Even with her mind failing, she never stopped trying to protect people. Jack looked toward Eleanor's room. "That's who she is." "I know." Wade stood. "I just wanted you to know that this is bigger than one family now. Kevin Brennan is going down for everything. And it's because of you. It's because of Eleanor. It's because of both of you." Wade headed for the door. "Stay with them, Jack. They're going to need you more than ever." "I'm not going anywhere." "I know." Wade paused. That's why they're lucky you found them. He left. Jack sat alone processing everything he'd heard. 30 victims. Millions stolen. A lifetime of predation finally exposed. And it had all started with 2 elderly people in a tent and a dog who wouldn't stop running. You knew, didn't you? Jack looked down at Titan. You knew there was something more. Titan's tail thumped once. Yeah. Jack scratched behind his ears. You always know. The first visitor arrived that afternoon. She was elderly herself, mid-70s, white hair, trembling hands. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she had driven 4 hours from Charlotte after seeing Rachel's video. I have to talk to them, she told the nurse at the front desk. I have to tell them they're not alone. Jack intercepted her before she could disturb Walter and Eleanor. Mrs. Chen, I'm Jack Morrison. Can I help you? You're the one who found them. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. You're the Navy man with the dog. That's right. Thank you. She grabbed his hand with surprising strength. Thank you for saving them, for showing people what he really is. Kevin Brennan. That monster. Margaret's voice shook with rage. He took everything from me. My husband's pension. Our savings. 40 years of work gone in 6 months. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. You were one of his victims. We all were. Margaret looked around the waiting room. There are more coming. People who saw the video. People who finally have hope that someone will listen. How many? I don't know, but the Facebook group has over 100 members now. Facebook group. Someone started it last night. Survivors of Kevin Brennan. People sharing their stories, comparing notes, finding each other. Margaret's voice strengthened. We were all alone before. He made sure of that, isolated us, convinced us we were the only ones, made us ashamed to talk about what happened. But now we're together. Margaret smiled through her tears. And we're going to make him pay. By the end of the day, the waiting room was full. Elderly people from across the region united by a common pain. They had come to support Walter and Eleanor, but they had found something more: each other. Jack watched them gather, share stories, cry together, and slowly begin to heal. This is remarkable, he said to Dr. Chen, who had come to check on the commotion. It's community. Dr. Chen's voice was soft. It's what happens when people stop hiding their pain and start sharing it. I never thought. None of us did. Dr. Chen looked at the crowd. But Rachel's video didn't just expose Kevin Brennan. It gave permission. Permission to speak. Permission to grieve. Permission to be angry. And permission to fight back. Exactly. Dr. Chen smiled. Sometimes the best medicine isn't drugs or surgery. Sometimes it's just knowing you're not alone. The phone call came at 1900 hours. Walter answered it, his hand shaking slightly. Jack sat nearby, watching, ready to intervene if needed. Hello? A long pause. Linda. Walter's voice cracked. Linda, is that you? Jack saw the tears start before Walter even spoke again. Where are you? You're at the airport. Yes. Yes, come. Please come. He hung up and looked at Jack. Our daughter. She's flying in from California. She saw the video and... He couldn't finish. When does she arrive? 2 hours. Walter wiped his face. I haven't seen her in 3 years. She stopped calling after Kevin convinced her we were too much trouble. He turned her against you. He turned everyone against us. Walter's voice was bitter. Kevin was always the golden child, the successful one, the one who made us proud. Linda... He paused. Linda had problems, depression, a bad marriage. Kevin made it sound like she was the one who couldn't be trusted. But she's coming now. She's coming now. Walter looked at Eleanor, who was sleeping peacefully, with Titan curled against her side. I need to tell Eleanor, but I don't know if she'll She'll understand. Jack's voice was firm. On her good days and her bad days, she'll understand. How do you know? Because she's a mother. Jack stood. And mothers always know when their children come home. Linda Brennan arrived at 2137 hours. She was 45 years old, but she looked older, worn down by life in ways that had nothing to do with age. Her hair was the same silver-streaked brown as Walter's, and she had Eleanor's eyes, intelligent, observant, haunted. She stopped in the doorway of the hospital room, unable to move. Dad. Walter rose from his chair with difficulty, his body still weak from 5 days of exposure. Linda. For a long moment, neither of them moved. 3 years of silence. 3 years of manipulation. 3 years of believing the wrong son. It all hung in the air between them. Then Linda broke. She crossed the room in 3 steps and threw herself into her father's arms, sobbing with an intensity that shook her entire body. I'm sorry. The words came out broken, fragmented. I'm so sorry. I believed him. I believed everything he said. I thought you didn't want me. I thought... Shh. Walter held her tight, his own tears falling into her hair. It's okay. You're here now. That's all that matters. He told me you were fine. He told me you didn't need me. He told me... Linda pulled back, her face streaked with tears. He told me you had Alzheimer's so bad you wouldn't even know who I was. Your mother has good days and bad days. Walter's voice was gentle. But she's never stopped asking for you. Not once. Linda turned toward the bed. Eleanor was awake. Her eyes were clear, one of her miraculous good moments, and they were fixed on her daughter with an expression of pure, overwhelming love. Linda. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. My baby girl. Linda fell to her knees beside the bed. Mama. She grabbed Eleanor's hand. Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have known. You're here now. Eleanor touched her daughter's face with trembling fingers. You came home. I'll never leave again. Linda was crying so hard she could barely speak. I promise, Mama, I'll never leave you again. I know, sweetheart. Eleanor smiled. I know. Jack watched from the doorway, Titan pressed against his legs. This was why he had stayed. Not for gratitude. Not for recognition. Not for any reason he could put into words. He had stayed because some moments were too sacred to witness alone, and some families were worth fighting for. Even broken ones. Especially broken ones. The next morning brought a different visitor. Rachel Morgan returned with a camera crew, not for sensationalism, but for documentation. Sheriff Wade had asked her to interview the other victims to build an official record of Kevin Brennan's crimes. We've identified 47 victims so far, Rachel told Jack as they watched the interviews unfold. Total losses exceed $12 million. $12 million. Jack shook his head. From elderly people. From vulnerable people. Rachel's voice was hard. He specifically targeted people who couldn't fight back. Widows, dementia patients, elderly couples with no close family. People like Walter and Eleanor. Exactly. Rachel paused. But there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone yet. What? Kevin's wife. Rachel pulled out her phone and showed Jack a text message. She contacted me this morning. She wants to talk. Kevin's wife wants to talk to you. She says she has information. Evidence that Kevin kept hidden. Things that could put him away for the rest of his life. Jack felt his instincts sharpen. What kind of evidence? She didn't say, but she wants to meet in person, tonight. It could be a trap. I know. Rachel met his eyes. That's why I'm asking you to come with me. Jack looked at Titan, who had risen to his feet, ears pricked forward. Where? Kevin's house. His wife Denise said she'll be there alone. And you trust her? I don't trust anyone. Rachel's voice was steady. But if there's even a chance she's telling the truth, I have to find out. Jack considered the risks. Kevin was in custody, but that didn't mean he didn't have allies. Didn't mean there weren't people who would do anything to protect his secrets. But if Denise Brennan had real evidence... What time? 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Jack looked at Titan. We'll both be there. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Jack's voice was grim. If this is a trap, things could get ugly. I know. Rachel smiled tightly. That's exactly why I want you there. Denise Brennan was not what Jack expected. She was younger than Kevin, early 40s, with the polished appearance of someone who had spent years cultivating an image. But the polish was cracking. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her hands shook as she opened the front door. Thank you for coming. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Please, come in. Jack entered First Titan at his heels. His eyes swept the room, automatically exits potential threats, anything out of place. The house was immaculate. Expensive furniture, designer art, all the trappings of success built on stolen money. Where are the staff? Jack asked. I sent them away. Denise closed the door. I didn't want anyone to know about this. Know about what exactly? Denise led them to a home office where a laptop sat open on the desk. Kevin thought I was stupid. Her voice was bitter. He thought I didn't notice the late nights, the locked files, the phone calls he took in private. But you noticed. I noticed everything. Denise sat down at the desk. For years I turned a blind eye. I didn't want to know. I liked the life we had, the house, the cars, the country club. I didn't want to ask where the money came from. What changed? His parents. Denise's voice cracked. When I saw that video, when I heard what he did, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. What do you have? Everything. Denise turned the laptop toward them. Bank accounts, transaction records, email communications with every victim he ever targeted. She scrolled through file after file. He kept it all, like trophies, like he was proud of what he'd done. Rachel leaned closer. This is incredible. This could put him away forever. There's more. Denise opened another folder. Kevin didn't work alone. He had partners. People in the financial industry who helped him identify targets, launder money, avoid detection. Jack felt ice form in his stomach. How many partners? At least a dozen. Denise scrolled through names. Bankers, financial advisors, even a few lawyers. They've been running this scheme for over a decade. This isn't just fraud. Jack's voice was hard. This is organized crime. Yes. Denise met his eyes. And I want to burn it all down. Why? Because Kevin killed something in me. Her voice broke. I used to be a person. I used to have values, morals, a conscience. Then I married him, and slowly, piece by piece, he destroyed all of it. You could have left. I was afraid. Denise wiped her eyes. He threatened me, controlled me, made me believe I was nothing without him. She looked at the laptop. But I was always watching, always keeping records, always preparing for the day I would be strong enough to fight back. And today is that day. Today is that day. Denise stood. Take it, all of it. Give it to the sheriff, the FBI, whoever can use it. I don't care what happens to me anymore. I just want Kevin to pay for what he did. Jack looked at Rachel. Copy everything. Already on it. While Rachel downloaded the files, Denise approached Jack. I heard what you did for Walter and Eleanor. Her voice was soft. How you found them. How you carried them out of the forest. I did what anyone would do. No, Denise shook her head. You did what a good person would do. And good people are rare, especially in Kevin's world. I'm not a good person, Mrs. Brennan. I've done things. I don't care what you've done. Denise's voice was fierce. I care what you're doing now, and what you're doing now is saving lives. Jack didn't know how to respond. Titan pressed against his leg. Some things didn't need words. The files changed everything. Sheriff Wade called an emergency meeting with the FBI presenting the evidence Denise had provided. Within 24 hours, 12 additional arrests were made. Bankers, advisors, and lawyers who had helped Kevin Brennan steal millions from vulnerable people. The story exploded. National news picked it up. Cable channels ran hours of coverage. Politicians demanded hearings, investigations, reforms. And through it all, Walter and Eleanor remained in their hospital room surrounded by the community that had formed around them. "I never wanted to be famous," Walter said to Jack one evening. "I just wanted to build houses and love my wife. You did both. Did I?" Walter looked at his hands, the hands that had built 1,000 homes. "My own son became a monster. Maybe I failed somewhere." "You didn't fail, Walter." "How do you know?" "Because Eleanor doesn't blame you." Jack gestured toward the bed where Eleanor was playing cards with Linda. "Because your daughter came home. Because 100 people you never met are fighting for justice in your name. That's not because of me. It's exactly because of you." Jack's voice was firm. "You survived, Walter. Against all odds, against everything Kevin threw at you, you survived. And your survival is changing the world." Walter was quiet for a long moment. "When I was in that tent watching Eleanor get weaker every day, I thought about giving up." His voice cracked. "I thought, what's the point? We have nothing left. No home. No money. No family that cares." "But you didn't give up." "I couldn't." Walter looked at Eleanor. "She needed me. As long as she needed me, I had to keep fighting." "That's love, Walter." "No." The old man shook his head. "That's survival. Love is what comes after the rebuilding, the healing, the choosing to go on, even when it hurts. You're doing that too. With help." Walter met Jack's eyes. "With you. With Titan. With everyone who refused to let us disappear." Jack felt something shift in his chest. "I didn't save you, Walter. You saved yourselves. I just showed up." "Sometimes showing up is everything." Walter's voice was soft. "Sometimes the whole world changes because one person chose to show up." Jack didn't have words for that. Neither did Titan. But the dog's tail wagged once a silent agreement that some truths were too big for human language. The trial began 3 weeks later. Kevin Brennan sat at the defendant's table dressed in an orange jumpsuit, his once confident face now gaunt and gray. His lawyers, the ones who hadn't been arrested, clustered around him shuffling papers, whispering strategies. But everyone knew it was over. The evidence was overwhelming. Denise's files, Eleanor's documents, testimony from 47 victims, bank records, emails, and recorded phone calls that left no room for doubt. Kevin Brennan was guilty. The only question was how long he would pay. Walter and Eleanor attended every day of the trial seated in the front row with Linda, Jack, and Titan beside them. The judge had initially objected to the dog, but one look at Eleanor's face, at the way she calmed whenever Titan was near, had silenced all arguments. On the third day, Kevin took the stand. The prosecution had hammered him with questions for hours, but the most devastating moment came from an unexpected source. "Mr. Brennan," the prosecutor's voice was calm, "did you love your parents?" Kevin's face twitched. "Of course I loved them." "You loved them when you stole their life savings. I was going to pay it back. You loved them when you drove them into the forest and left them with a tent and no supplies. It was temporary. You loved them when you walked away without saying goodbye, when you left them to freeze to death, when you didn't come back for 5 days. I was going to come back." Kevin's voice cracked. "I just needed time." "Time for what, Mr. Brennan?" The prosecutor stepped closer. "Time for them to die. Time for the evidence of your crimes to disappear." "No, I never wanted them to die." "Then why didn't you come back?" Silence. Kevin's face crumpled. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Afraid of what they would say, what they would do. Afraid that if I went back, I'd have to face what I'd become. And what had you become, Mr. Brennan? Kevin looked at his parents for the first time since the trial began. Walter stared back, his face carved from stone. Eleanor's eyes were clear, one of her good days, and they held something Kevin had never seen before. Not anger. Not hatred. Pity. What had you become? The prosecutor repeated. Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. A monster. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, attempted murder. The sentence would come later, but everyone knew it would be decades, maybe life. Kevin Brennan would die in prison. As the verdict was read, Jack watched Walter and Eleanor. They didn't celebrate, didn't cheer, didn't show any sign of satisfaction. They just held hands and wept. Wept for the son they had lost long before he became a criminal. Wept for the family that would never be whole again. Wept for the love that had been betrayed, broken, but somehow miraculously not destroyed. Jack felt Titan press against his leg. I know, boy. His voice was barely a whisper. I know. Some victories didn't feel like victories. Some justice came too late. Some wounds never fully healed. But as Jack watched Walter help Eleanor to her feet, watched Linda wrap her arms around both of them, watched the community of survivors gather around the family they had adopted as their own, he realized something important. Healing wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about choosing to live anyway. And the Brennans were choosing to live. One day at a time. One moment at a time. Together. 6 weeks after the trial, the Brennans moved into their new home. It wasn't much, a small 2-bedroom cottage on the edge of Pinewood, donated by a local charity that had been overwhelmed with contributions after Rachel's documentary aired. But to Walter and Eleanor, it was everything. Can you believe it? Walter stood in the doorway, his voice cracking. 6 weeks ago, we had nothing. Now we have this. Linda squeezed his arm. Because people cared, Dad. Because the world saw what happened and decided to help. Jack carried the last box through the door, Titan trotting beside him. The dog had become inseparable from the Brennans, especially Eleanor, who had declared him her personal guardian angel. Where do you want this one? Jack asked. Kitchen. Eleanor was already directing traffic from her wheelchair, her good days becoming more frequent as the stress of survival faded into the comfort of stability. The blue dishes go in the cabinet above the sink, the ones my mother gave me. You still have those? Linda rescued them from the storage unit. Eleanor's voice softened. Before Kevin could sell them. The mention of Kevin's name fell into the room like a stone into still water. No one spoke for a moment. He's being sentenced next week, Walter finally said. The prosecutor called this morning. I know. Jack set down the box. Are you going? Yes. Walter's voice was firm. We need to see it through. All of it. Are you sure that's wise? Linda's concern was evident. Mom's health. I'm going. Eleanor's voice cut through the objection. He's still my son. Whatever he's become, he came from me. I need to look him in the eyes one last time. Eleanor, don't argue with me, Walter Brennan. There was steel in her voice, the steel of a woman who had survived 1,000 impossible things. I've earned the right to face him. No one argued after that. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday. The courtroom was packed, victim supporters, media, and curious observers who had followed the case from the beginning. Security was tight. Emotions were high. Jack arrived early, with the Brennans positioning himself near the aisle where he could watch both the family and the crowd. Titan sat at his feet, alert, and focused, his training kicking in automatically. You don't have to stay, Walter said quietly. You've done enough. I'm not leaving. Why? Walter's voice cracked. Why do you keep showing up? What do you get out of this? Jack considered the question carefully. When I came home from Afghanistan, I was broken. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't connect. Couldn't figure out why I'd survived when everyone else died. He paused. Titan kept me alive, but he couldn't give me a reason to live. And now I have one. Jack met Walter's eyes. You and Eleanor. This community. The people who needed help and finally got it. We needed you. And I needed to be needed. Jack's voice dropped. That's the truth, Walter. You didn't just survive that forest, you gave me a purpose, a reason to keep going. Walter was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and clasped Jack's hand. Thank you, son. It was the first time he'd called Jack that. It wouldn't be the last. Kevin entered the courtroom in chains. He looked smaller than Jack remembered, diminished somehow, as if the weight of his crimes had physically compressed him. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds since his arrest. The murmur that rippled through the courtroom was not sympathetic. All rise. Judge Patricia Morrison took her seat, her face betraying nothing. She had presided over hundreds of cases, but this one, the systematic destruction of elderly lives by their own family member, had clearly affected her. Be seated. The courtroom settled into tense silence. Kevin Andrew Brennan. The judge's voice was steady. You have been found guilty of 47 counts of financial fraud, 12 counts of elder abuse, and 1 count of attempted murder in the first degree. Kevin stood his chains rattling softly. Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say? Kevin's lawyer whispered something, but Kevin shook him off. Yes, Your Honor. His voice was hoarse. I do. He turned toward the gallery, toward his parents, who sat in the front row with Linda, Jack, and Titan. Mom, Dad. Kevin's voice broke. I know you can never forgive me. I know what I did was evil. There's no other word for it. Eleanor's face was unreadable. Walter's jaw was clenched tight. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd fix everything before anyone got hurt, that the money I took was just borrowed, not stolen. Kevin wiped his eyes. But that was a lie. Everything was a lie. Including the part where you left us to die. Walter's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Walter, the judge began. No. Walter stood, his whole body trembling. You want to apologize, fine. But don't pretend you didn't know exactly what you were doing. Dad, you looked me in the eye and told us someone was coming. You watched your mother, the woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you. You watched her stand in the snow and beg you not to leave. Walter's voice cracked. And you drove away anyway. I was scared. We were scared. Walter's control shattered. We were terrified we were dying, and the whole time you were sitting in your warm house, counting the days until we stopped being a problem. The courtroom was silent. Kevin's face crumpled. I'm sorry. The words came out broken, barely human. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back the 5 days we spent wondering if our own son wanted us dead. Walter took a shaking breath. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. Then what does? Nothing. Walter's voice dropped to a whisper. Nothing fixes this, Kevin. Nothing ever will. He sat down heavily. Eleanor reached for his hand. And Kevin stood alone, facing the consequences of everything he'd done. Judge Morrison waited until the silence had stretched to its breaking point. Mr. Brennan, she said finally, I have presided over many cases in my career. I have seen cruelty in forms that most people couldn't imagine. But I have rarely seen anything as calculating, as heartless as what you did to your own parents. Kevin didn't respond. You didn't just steal their money. You didn't just betray their trust. You looked at the people who gave you life and decided they were worth less than your debts. Your Honor. I'm not finished. Morrison's voice hardened. You left them in a forest to die. You knew exactly what you were doing and you did it anyway. The only reason they survived is because a stranger, a man with no obligation to help, happened to be in the right place at the right time. She looked at Jack. A man who showed more compassion for strangers than you showed for your own flesh and blood. Kevin's head dropped. For the crime of attempted murder in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years to life in state prison. A murmur swept through the courtroom. For the 47 counts of financial fraud, I sentence you to an additional 15 years to be served consecutively. Kevin's lawyer whispered urgently, but the judge ignored him. For the 12 counts of elder abuse, I sentence you to an additional 10 years, also consecutive. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. Total sentence 50 years to life with no possibility of parole for 30 years. Kevin's legs gave out. His lawyer caught him before he hit the floor. Mr. Brennan, you will spend the rest of your life paying for what you did. And even then, it won't be enough. Morrison gathered her papers. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. Jack found Eleanor alone in the courthouse hallway. She was sitting on a bench, staring at nothing, her hands folded in her lap. Titan had stationed himself at her feet, his watchful eyes never leaving her face. Mrs. Brennan. 50 years. Her voice was distant. My son will spend 50 years in prison. He earned it. I know. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. But I can't stop thinking about the boy he used to be. Before the money. Before the lies. Before everything went wrong. What was he like? Kind. The word seemed to hurt her. He was so kind. He used to bring me flowers from the garden, dandelions mostly, but he thought they were the most beautiful things in the world. What happened? I don't know. Eleanor's voice cracked. I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. Was it something we did? Something we didn't do? How does a child who brought his mother dandelions become a man who leaves her to die? Jack didn't have an answer. Some questions were too big for answers. I keep waiting to feel something, Eleanor continued. Relief, anger, satisfaction, something that tells me this is over. And I just feel empty. She looked at Titan, who pressed closer to her legs. Like there's a hole where my son used to be and nothing will ever fill it. Maybe that's okay. Eleanor looked up. What do you mean? Maybe grief doesn't have to end. Jack sat down beside her. Maybe it just changes, becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you. That sounds like wisdom. It's just experience. Jack's voice was quiet. I lost my whole team in Afghanistan. 8 men I loved like brothers. For years I tried to stop grieving, to move on, to let go, to be normal again. Did it work? No. The grief just got louder. Jack looked at Titan. Then I realized that grief wasn't the enemy. It was love. Love that had nowhere to go anymore. So what did you do? I found new places for it to go. Jack met her eyes. You, Walter, Linda, the community that formed around your story. I didn't stop loving the men I lost. I just found new people to love alongside them. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. You're a wise man, Jack Morrison. I'm a survivor, just like you. Is there a difference? Jack smiled sadly. I'm still figuring that out. The community gathered that evening at the Brennans' new cottage. It had started as a small celebration, a few neighbors bringing food, a few survivors sharing stories. But word spread, and more people came, and soon the tiny house was overflowing with warmth and laughter, and the unmistakable energy of people who had chosen hope over despair. Rachel Morgan filmed it all. This is remarkable, she told Jack, her camera capturing the scene. A month ago, these people were isolated, ashamed, afraid to talk about what happened. Now look at them. They found each other. They found more than that. Rachel lowered her camera. They found purpose. Every single person in this room has committed to helping others. Volunteer programs support groups' awareness campaigns. They're turning their pain into action. That's how healing works. Is it? Rachel studied his face. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I am. Jack watched Titan weave through the crowd, accepting pets and praise with dignified patience. I spent 3 years hiding in the mountains, convinced that my pain made me useless. These people showed me something different. What? That broken things can still be beautiful. Jack's voice dropped. That the cracks are where the light gets in. Rachel was quiet for a moment. That's beautiful. It's not mine. Some Japanese artist said it first. Jack smiled slightly. But it's true. Will you stay in Pinewood, I mean? For a while. Jack looked at Walter and Eleanor, who were surrounded by well-wishers. They need me, and I need them. And after? I don't know. Jack's honesty was disarming. I've spent so long planning for death that I never learned to plan for life. Maybe it's time to start. Maybe it is. They stood together watching the celebration unfold, and Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival. Not the fragile hope of recovery. Real hope. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Walter found Jack on the porch later that night. The crowd had thinned, but a few hardy souls remained inside, sharing stories and laughter. Titan lay at Jack's feet, exhausted from a day of being everyone's favorite dog. Mind if I join you? It's your porch. Walter sat down with a groan. I'm 78 years old. I've survived a war, a recession, and being left to die by my own son. He chuckled darkly. You'd think I'd be used to hard things by now. Are you? No. Walter's voice softened. Every time I think I've seen the worst life find something new to throw at me. But you keep going. What choice do I have? Walter looked at the stars. Eleanor needs me. Linda needs me. Hell, even that dog needs me. We all need each other. That's the thing about getting old. Walter's voice was reflective. You spend your whole life thinking you're independent, strong, self-sufficient. Then something happens, and you realize you were never alone. You were just too proud to see it. Pride's not always a bad thing. No, but it can be a lonely thing. Walter turned to Jack. I was proud of Kevin, so proud that I couldn't see what he was becoming. I told myself the signs were nothing, just a phase, just stress, just the pressures of success. You couldn't have known. I should have known. Walter's voice cracked. I'm his father. I should have seen it, should have stopped it before it destroyed everything. You can't save people who don't want to be saved, Walter. Can't you? The old man's eyes glistened. Eleanor tried. She saw the documents gathered, the evidence confronted him. And he left us to die for it. She was brave. She was desperate. Walter wiped his face. We both were. But it wasn't enough. It was enough to survive. Jack's voice was firm. It was enough to bring him to justice. It was enough to save 47 other people from the same fate. Those people. Walter shook his head. I keep meeting them, hearing their stories. Every single one of them trusted Kevin the way we did. And every single one of them is healing, because of what you and Eleanor did. We didn't do anything. You survived. Jack stood and faced Walter directly. You survived when he wanted you dead. You spoke the truth when he wanted you silent. You showed the world what he really was. His voice hardened. That's not nothing, Walter. That's everything. Walter was quiet for a long moment. My son is going to die in prison. Yes. And I'll never see him again. Probably not. Do you think... Walter's voice broke. Do you think I'll ever stop loving him? The question hung in the air like smoke. Jack thought about his team, about the men he'd loved and lost, about the grief that never fully faded, just changed shape over time. No, he said finally. "I don't think you'll ever stop loving him." "Then how do I live with that?" "The same way you live with everything else." Jack put his hand on Walter's shoulder. "One day at a time, one breath at a time, one moment of grace at a time." Grace. Walter laughed bitterly. "I'm not sure I believe in grace anymore." "Then believe in this." Jack gestured at the house, at the people inside at Titan, lying peacefully at their feet. "Believe in the community that formed around you. The daughter who came home. The stranger who carried you out of the forest. You. Me. And everyone else who refused to look away." Jack's voice softened. "That's grace, Walter. Not some abstract theological concept. Just people choosing to care about each other." Walter was silent. Then slowly he nodded. "Thank you, Jack." "For what?" "For showing up." Walter's voice cracked. "For every single time you showed up when you didn't have to." "I always have to." Jack looked at Titan, who had raised his head at the sound of his name. "That's what I learned from this guy. You show up for your pack, no matter what." "Pack." Walter smiled. "Is that what we are now?" "It's what we've always been." Jack headed for the door. "We just didn't know it yet." Inside, Eleanor was telling stories. The survivors had gathered around her, drawn by her warmth, her wisdom, her refusal to be defined by tragedy. She was speaking about her years as a teacher, about the children she'd loved, the lessons she'd learned, the difference she'd made. "Every child is a possibility," she was saying. "Every single one. Some of them will break your heart. Some of them will make you proud. But every single one of them deserves someone who believes in them." "Even Kevin?" someone asked. The room went quiet. Eleanor considered the question carefully. Kevin deserved a mother who loved him, and he got one. Her voice didn't waver. "What he did with that love was his choice, his responsibility. I can grieve the son I lost without forgiving the man he became." "Is that possible?" "It has to be." Eleanor looked around the room. "Because the alternative is letting his choices destroy me, and I refuse to give him that power." "How do you do it?" "One day at a time." Eleanor smiled. "And with help." She reached for Titan, who had positioned himself at her side. "From a very good dog, and a very good man." She looked at Jack. "And from all of you. Every single person who refused to let us disappear." The room was quiet. Then Margaret Chen stood up. "To Eleanor," she said, raising her glass. "To Walter, to Jack and Titan, and to everyone here who survived something they shouldn't have." "To survival," someone else added. "To family," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion. "To hope," Rachel finished. The glasses clinked together, and in a small cottage on the edge of Pinewood, surrounded by people who had started as strangers and become something more, the Brennan family began the long, slow process of becoming whole again. Not healed, not yet, maybe not ever completely, but whole in the ways that mattered. Whole in love, whole in purpose, whole in the unshakable knowledge that they were not alone. Later that night, Jack stood at the window of his cabin. The mountains stretched before him, dark and silent, the same view he'd stared at for 3 years while hiding from the world. But something was different now. The darkness didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt peaceful, protective, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would come next. Titan pressed against his leg. "Big changes, boy." Jack scratched behind the dog's ears. "For all of us." Titan's tail wagged. "I've been thinking." Jack's voice was quiet. "About what comes next. About what I'm supposed to do with this life I keep surviving." Titan looked up at him. "Walter called us pack, and he's right. We are. But packs need a purpose, a mission, something to protect." The dog's ears pricked forward. "There are more people out there like the Brennans. Elderly, vulnerable, abandoned. People who need someone to show up for them." Jack's jaw tightened. I think that's supposed to be us. Titan barked once sharp, decisive. Yeah. Jack smiled. I thought you'd agree. He looked out at the mountains one last time. No more hiding, boy. No more pretending we're just surviving. It's time to live. Titan pressed closer. Let's go make a difference. 1 year later, Jack Morrison stood where it all began. The clearing was different now. Where a thin tent had once stood a death sentence wrapped in cheap fabric, there was a simple stone marker. Walter had carved it himself, his carpenter's hand steady despite his 79 years. This is where we were found, the inscription read. This is where we were saved. This is where strangers became family. Titan sat beside Jack, his black and tan coat graying around the muzzle. The dog was 9 years old now, ancient by German Shepherd standards, but his eyes were still sharp, still watchful, still ready. 1 year, boy. Jack knelt and rubbed behind Titan's ears. Can you believe it? Titan's tail wagged. Neither can I. The sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Walter emerged from the trail, moving slowly but steadily. He had lost none of his pride, none of his determination. If anything, the past year had strengthened him, given him purpose where there had been despair. Thought I'd find you here, Walter said. Couldn't stay away. Jack stood. It felt important to come back. It is important. Walter touched the stone marker with reverent fingers. This is holy ground, Jack. Not because of what happened here, but because of what started here. What started here? Everything. Walter's voice was soft. The community, the movement, you and me. All of it started right here in this clearing when you decided to follow your dog into the unknown. I didn't decide anything. Titan took off running. I just tried to keep up. That's the thing about miracles. Walter smiled. They rarely look like miracles when they're happening. They just look like chaos. It's only later that you see the pattern. You believe in miracles now. I believe in you. Walter met Jack's eyes. I believe in that dog. I believe in the 100 people whose lives you've changed since you found us. We've changed. Jack's correction was automatic. All of us together. Together. Walter nodded. That's the word, isn't it? The whole secret of everything. They stood in silence, two men who had found each other in the darkest possible moment and emerged as something neither had expected. Family. Eleanor's waiting, Walter finally said. The whole town is. They want to celebrate. Celebrate what? The anniversary. The foundation. You. Walter's voice cracked. Everything you've built in her name. I didn't build it for recognition. I know. That's why it matters so much. Walter put his hand on Jack's shoulder. Come on, son. Let's go home. The town square was transformed. Not with decorations or banners that wasn't Pinewood style, but with people. Hundreds of them gathered in a way that would have been impossible a year ago. Jack recognized faces in the crowd. Margaret Chen, who had driven 4 hours to meet Eleanor in the hospital and never left. She ran the volunteer coordination, now matching elderly people with helpers, making sure no one fell through the cracks. Sheriff Wade, who had retired from law enforcement to work full-time with the foundation. His experience with elder abuse cases had proven invaluable. Rachel Morgan, whose documentary had won 3 national awards and sparked legislative reform in 4 states. She was working on a follow-up now, tracking the long-term impact of the movement that had started with a single viral video. And Denise Brennan, Kevin's ex-wife, who had divorced him, donated her settlement to the foundation and now counseled other women trapped in marriages built on lies. All of them were here. All of them were family. Jack. Eleanor's voice rang out across the square. She was sitting in her wheelchair, surrounded by well-wishers, Titan already stationed at her side. The dog had an uncanny ability to find her in any crowd, as if protecting Eleanor was still his primary mission. Maybe it was. Mrs. Brennan. Jack knelt beside her. "You look beautiful." Don't lie to a 76-year-old woman. But Eleanor was smiling. "Although I do appreciate the effort." "How are you feeling?" "Clear." Eleanor's eyes were bright, one of her good days, the kind that had become more frequent as stress gave way to stability. "Very clear today." "I'm glad." "So am I." She took his hand. "I wanted to remember this, all of it. The faces, the voices, the feeling of being surrounded by people who care. You'll remember. Maybe, maybe not." Eleanor's voice was peaceful. "But even if I forget, the love will still be here. That's what I've learned this year. Love doesn't need memory, it just needs presence." Jack felt his throat tighten. "You taught me that." "We taught each other." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "Now stand up and make your speech. Everyone's waiting." "I hate speeches." "I know. That's why I'm making you do it." Eleanor's smile was mischievous. "Consider it payback for carrying me 4 miles through the snow." "That was nothing." "It was everything." Her voice dropped. "It was absolutely everything, Jack Morrison. Don't ever forget that." He wouldn't. He couldn't. Jack stood before the crowd and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. "1 year ago," he began, "I was hiding. Living in a cabin in the mountains, trying to convince myself that isolation was the same as peace. I had a dog who refused to let me give up, but I was doing my best to prove him wrong." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Then Titan did something he'd never done before. He took off running into the forest, following a scent I couldn't detect toward people I didn't know existed. And because I'd learned to trust him, because 18 years of military service had taught me that your partner knows things you don't, I followed. Jack looked at Walter and Eleanor. "I found 2 people in a tent, elderly, hypothermic, abandoned by their own son. They should have been dead. By every medical standard, by every survival statistic, they should have been dead." He paused. "But they weren't. Because love is stronger than cold. Because hope is stronger than despair. Because some people refuse to give up even when giving up would be easier." Eleanor wiped her eyes. Walter held her hand tighter. "I didn't save the Brennans." Jack's voice hardened. "Let me be clear about that. I found them, yes. I carried them out, yes. But they saved themselves. They survived 5 days in conditions that would have killed most people because they refused to let go of each other." He looked at the crowd. "That's what I want you to remember today. Not my story, theirs. The story of a 78-year-old man who shielded his wife with his own body. The story of a 75-year-old woman who stopped eating so her husband would have more food. The story of a love that lasted 55 years and refused to die in a tent in the forest." The crowd was silent. "The foundation we built this year, the one that's helped 100 families, exposed a dozen predators, changed laws in 4 states, that foundation exists because of them. Because Eleanor gathered evidence against her own son, knowing it might cost her everything. Because Walter stood up in court and told the truth, even though it broke his heart." Jack's voice cracked. "They're the heroes. Not me. Not Titan. Them." He stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, a single pair of hands, then 2, then 10, then hundreds. It built like a wave washing over the square surrounding the Brennans in a wall of gratitude and love. Eleanor was crying. Walter was crying. Even Titan was wagging his tail as if he understood exactly what was happening. Jack stood alone at the edge of the crowd and felt something shift in his chest. Peace. Not the absence of pain that would never go away completely, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that his survival meant something, that every nightmare, every flashback, every moment of desperate loneliness had led him to this place, to these people, to this family. The celebration continued into the evening. Food appeared from nowhere, casseroles and pies, and enough fried chicken to feed an army. Music played from speakers someone had set up. Children ran through the crowd, their laughter mixing with the conversation of adults. Linda found Jack near the edge of the square where he'd retreated to watch without being watched. Hiding again. Old habits. Mind if I join you? It's a free country. Linda leaned against the wall beside him. She looked different than she had a year ago, stronger, more grounded, less haunted by the choices she couldn't change. I never thanked you properly, she said. For what? For giving me my parents back. Linda's voice cracked. For showing me that it wasn't too late. It almost was. But it wasn't. She turned to face him. That's the point, Jack. It almost was, but it wasn't. And because of that, I got 3 more years with my mother, maybe more. Every single day is a gift. 3 years. The doctors say her condition is stabilizing. The stress was accelerating her decline. Now that she's safe surrounded by people who love her, Linda smiled through tears. They can't explain it, but she's getting better. Love does that. So does community. Linda looked at the crowd. She has 100 people watching over her now, 100 people who would notice if something was wrong. That's not just medicine, that's miracle. I don't believe in miracles. Then believe in people. Linda put her hand on his arm. Believe in what we've built together, because it's real, Jack. It's the most real thing I've ever been part of. Jack didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. The letter arrived the next morning. Jack found it in his mailbox, a plain white envelope with a state prison return address. He knew who it was from before he opened it. Kevin Brennan. He almost threw it away, almost decided that whatever Kevin had to say didn't matter anymore. But something stopped him, maybe curiosity, maybe obligation, maybe just the need to understand. He opened it. Dear Mr. Morrison, the letter began. I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't if I were you, but I needed to write it anyway, even if it just ends up in the trash where it belongs. I've been in prison for 11 months now. It's exactly as bad as you'd expect, worse in some ways. The other inmates know what I did. They know I abandoned my parents. In here, that makes me the lowest of the low. I'm not looking for sympathy. I don't deserve it. I'm just trying to explain why I'm writing. Last week, a chaplain came to visit me. He brought a newspaper article about the foundation you started, the one named after my mother. I read it 3 times before I understood what I was seeing. You took the worst thing I ever did and turned it into something good. You took the people I hurt and gave them a community. You took my parents, the ones I left to die, and surrounded them with more love than I ever gave them in 48 years. I don't understand how that's possible. I don't understand how someone like you exists. I don't understand how the world can contain so much evil and so much good at the same time. But I'm starting to learn. The chaplain has been teaching me about redemption, not the kind where everything gets fixed and everyone forgives you. The real kind. The kind where you accept what you've done, carry the weight of it forever, and try to become someone better anyway. I'm not there yet. I may never get there. But I'm trying. I've been writing letters to the people I hurt, not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. Just acknowledging what I did. Taking responsibility. Telling them they weren't crazy, weren't wrong, weren't at fault. Most of them don't respond. I understand why. But a few have. And those few letters, the ones that say, I believe you're sorry, or I hope you find peace, those letters are the only things keeping me alive some days. I know I'll never see my parents again. I know they'll never forgive me. I know that the damage I did can't be undone, only lived with. But I want you to know something, Mr. Morrison. I'm grateful. Grateful that you found them. Grateful that you saved them. Grateful that they got to spend their last years surrounded by love instead of alone in the cold. I couldn't give them that. You did. Thank you. Kevin Brennan. Jack read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He didn't show it to Walter and Eleanor. Didn't tell them about it. Some things were private. Some bridges were too broken to rebuild. But later that night, alone in his cabin with Titan at his feet, he thought about redemption. About the difference between forgiveness and change. About whether anyone, even someone who had done something unforgivable, could become something better. He didn't have answers. But for the first time he had questions. And questions he was learning were where hope lived. The foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months of the anniversary celebration, the Eleanor Brennan Foundation had expanded to 12 states. Volunteer networks, training programs, awareness campaigns, all of it spreading like wildfire through communities that had been waiting for exactly this kind of support. Jack traveled constantly, setting up new chapters, training new volunteers, speaking at conferences and town halls, and anywhere people would listen. Titan traveled with him. "You're becoming famous," Rachel told him during one of her documentary filming sessions. The Navy SEAL who saved the elderly couple. The man with the miracle dog. "I don't want to be famous." "Too late." Rachel smiled. "You're already a symbol, Jack. A symbol of what happens when someone chooses to care." "I didn't choose anything. I just followed my dog." "And that's exactly why people love your story." Rachel leaned closer. "Because it's not about being a hero. It's about showing up. Anyone can do that." "Can they?" "You tell me." Rachel gestured at the crowd gathering for Jack's next speech. "Look at all these people. They're not SEALs. They're not trained rescuers. They're just ordinary people who saw what you did and decided to do the same thing. That's not because of me. It's exactly because of you." Rachel's voice softened. "You showed them what's possible. You showed them that one person can make a difference. One person and one very stubborn dog." "That too." Rachel laughed. "Always give the dog credit. That's rule number 1. Jack looked at Titan, who was being petted by a group of elderly women. "He deserves more credit than I do." "Maybe, but you make a better interview subject." Rachel raised her camera. "Now smile for the documentary. We're making history here." "I don't smile on command." "Then just look determined. You're good at that." Jack didn't smile, but something in his eyes was lighter than it had been a year ago. Something that looked almost like joy. Eleanor's decline came suddenly. One morning she was clear laughing with Linda about childhood memories, planning a garden she wanted to plant in the spring. The next morning she didn't recognize anyone. Jack got the call at 600. "She's asking for you." Linda's voice was thick with tears. "She doesn't know who I am, but she keeps saying your name. And Titan's." "I'm on my way." He made the 3-hour drive in 2 Titan riding shotgun with his head out the window. Eleanor was in her bedroom when he arrived, surrounded by Walter, Linda, and the community that had formed around her. But she didn't seem to see any of them. Her eyes found Jack the moment he walked through the door. "There you are." Her voice was clear but distant. "I've been waiting. I came as fast as I could." "I know." Eleanor reached for his hand. "Bring the dog. Bring my angel." Titan jumped onto the bed without being told, curling his body against Eleanor's side, exactly the way he had in the forest a year ago. "That's better." Eleanor sighed. "That's much better." "How are you feeling?" "Confused." The word came out matter of fact. "I don't remember where I am. I don't remember why everyone's crying." "That's okay." "Is it?" Eleanor looked at him with eyes that held both confusion and clarity. "I feel like something important is happening, but I can't quite." "You're safe." Jack squeezed her hand. "That's all you need to know." "Safe." Eleanor repeated the word like a prayer. "Yes, I feel safe." She looked at Titan. "He's been with me from the beginning, hasn't he? This beautiful dog." "From the very beginning." "I remember snow." Eleanor's voice grew distant. "I remember being cold. I remember thinking I was going to die. But you didn't. No, Eleanor smiled. Because you came. You and this angel. Titan found you. I just followed. That's the same thing. Eleanor's grip tightened on his hand. Following is how we find each other. Following is how we make it home. Jack felt tears burning in his eyes. You're home now, Mrs. Brennan. You're exactly where you belong. With my family. Eleanor looked around the room at Walter, at Linda, at the dozen people who had gathered to be with her. All of my family. All of us. Eleanor closed her eyes. I'm tired, Jack. So tired. Then rest. Will you stay? As long as you need. Forever. Jack's voice broke. Forever. Eleanor smiled. That's a nice word. Forever. Her breathing slowed. I think I like that word very much. She didn't speak again. Eleanor Brennan died at 1547 on a Tuesday afternoon. She was surrounded by love, by family, by the community she had helped create, by a dog who refused to leave her side, and a man who had found purpose in her survival. She was 76 years old. She had been married for 56 years. She had touched more lives than anyone could count. Walter held her hand until the end. She's gone, he said quietly. My Eleanor is gone. No one spoke. Titan whined softly and pressed closer to Eleanor's still form. 56 years. Walter's voice cracked. 56 years of loving her, and it still wasn't enough. It was everything. Linda's voice was thick with tears. It was everything, Dad. I know. Walter looked at Jack. Thank you. For staying. For being here at the end. There's nowhere else I would be. She loved you, you know. Loved you like a son. I know. Jack wiped his face. I loved her too. She knew. Walter smiled through his tears. She always knew. They sat together in silence as the light faded. An old man grieving his wife. A daughter who had come home too late and stayed just long enough. A soldier who had found his purpose in the most unlikely place. And a dog who had never ever given up. The funeral was held 3 days later. The entire town of Pinewood shut down. Stores closed. Schools let out early. Everyone came to pay their respects. The church couldn't hold them all. People spilled onto the lawn into the parking lot down the street. They came with flowers, with stories, with tears that fell freely. Jack gave the eulogy. Eleanor Brennan was 76 years old when she died, he said. But her life didn't end in that bedroom. Her life ended 40 years ago in a first-grade classroom where a child who couldn't read learned to love books. Her life ended 20 years ago when a young couple she'd helped stayed married instead of divorcing. Her life ended last month when an elderly woman in Oregon called our foundation and said, "Someone finally listened to me." He paused. Eleanor's body is gone, but Eleanor is everywhere. In every volunteer who shows up when they don't have to. In every family that's been reunited. In every law that's been changed. Every predator who's been exposed. Every life that's been saved. Jack looked at Walter. She taught us that love doesn't end. It just changes form. It becomes memory. It becomes legacy. It becomes the 1,000 small acts of kindness that ripple out into the world long after we're gone. He looked at Titan, who sat quietly beside the casket. She called him her angel. And maybe he was. Maybe that's what angels are, not creatures with wings, but beings who show up when we need them most and refuse to leave until we're safe. Jack took a breath. I'm not a religious man, but I believe in Eleanor Brennan. I believe in what she stood for. I believe that her life meant something. Something so big that we're still discovering all the ways it changed the world. He stepped back from the podium. Rest in peace, Eleanor. You've earned it. The congregation stood, and one by one they filed past the casket, touching it gently, whispering goodbyes, honoring a woman who had survived the worst her son could do, and emerged more loving than ever. 3 months after the funeral, Jack received an invitation. It came from Walter, a simple handwritten note asking him to come to the cottage that evening. No explanation, no details. Jack went. He found the cottage full of people. The community that had formed around the Brennans, Margaret Sheriff, Wade, Rachel Denise, and dozens of others. They were gathered in the living room and they all fell silent when Jack walked in. "What's going on?" Walter stepped forward. "We have something for you." "I don't need anything." "This isn't about what you need." Walter's voice was thick with emotion. "It's about what you deserve." He handed Jack a framed document. Jack looked at it. His hands began to shake. This is a deed. To the cottage." Walter nodded. "Eleanor wanted you to have it. She put it in her will." "I can't accept this." "You don't have a choice." Linda stepped forward. "Mom was very specific. She said, 'Jack Morrison gave us a home when we had nothing. Now I'm giving him one.'" "But this is your house, your home." "Our home is with each other." Walter put his hand on Jack's shoulder. "The building doesn't matter. The people do." Jack stared at the deed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Walter smiled. "Say you'll stay. Say you'll keep running the foundation from here. Say you'll let us be your family the way you let us become yours." Jack looked around the room. At the faces watching him with hope and love. At Titan, who had stationed himself at his feet. At the home Eleanor had left him, not because he deserved it, but because love doesn't keep score. "Yes," he said finally. "Yes to all of it." The room erupted in applause. And Jack Morrison, former Navy SEAL survivor of war and loss and endless grief, finally let himself be home. 1 year after Eleanor's death, Jack stood where it all began. The clearing was quiet. The stone marker Walter had carved had weathered slightly, moss beginning to grow along its edges. Titan sat beside him, older now, his muzzle fully gray, his movements slower but still strong. 2 years, boy." Jack knelt and rubbed behind his ears. 2 years since we found them." Titan's tail wagged. "I think about her every day. Eleanor, her voice, her smile, the way she called you her angel." The dog pressed closer. "She was right, you know, about all of it, about love lasting, about family being more than blood, about showing up being the most important thing we can do." Jack stood and looked at the mountains. "I spent so long hiding from the world, convinced that I was broken, that surviving was a curse instead of a gift." He took a breath. "But she showed me something different. She showed me that survival has a purpose, that every day we're still breathing is a day we can help someone else." Titan barked once. "Yeah, I know. Enough philosophy." Jack smiled. "Let's go home." They walked together down the trail, man and dog, survivor and savior, a pack of two that had become a family of hundreds. Behind them, the stone marker stood silent in the forest. "This is where we were found. This is where we were saved. This is where strangers became family." And ahead of them the world waited, full of people who needed help, full of families waiting to be saved, full of love that refused to die. Walter was waiting on the porch when they arrived. He was 80 years old now, still strong, still proud, still refusing to let life break him. "Good walk." "The best." Jack sat beside him. "I went to the clearing. I figured." Walter was quiet for a moment. "I go sometimes too, when I need to feel close to her." "Do you?" "Always." Walter smiled. "She's there, Jack. In the trees, in the wind, in the stone I carved with my own hands. She's everywhere I look." "I believe that." "Good." Walter reached down and scratched Titan's ears. "Because it's true." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "I got a call today," Jack said finally. "From the governor's office." "About what?" "They want to name a bill after Eleanor. New protections for elderly people. Mandatory reporting. Stronger penalties for elder abuse. Walter's eyes filled with tears. She would have loved that. I know. My wife. Walter's voice cracked. A teacher from Charlotte, and now she's changing laws. She changed more than laws. Jack looked at him. She changed me. She changed all of us. They watched the last light fade. Jack. Yeah. Thank you. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. For everything. For finding us. For saving us. For staying when you could have walked away. I couldn't walk away. Why not? Jack thought about the question for a long time. Because Titan wouldn't let me. He smiled. And because some things are worth fighting for. Even when it hurts. Even when it's hard. Even when you don't know if you'll survive. What things? Love. Jack looked at Walter. Family. The chance to make a difference. You've made more than a difference. Walter stood slowly. You've changed the world, Jack Morrison. One person at a time. We've changed it together. Together. Walter nodded. That's the only way anything gets changed. He headed inside. Jack stayed on the porch, Titan at his feet, watching the stars appear one by one. She was right, you know. He scratched behind the dog's ears. About all of it. About following being how we find each other. About love not needing memory. About angels coming in unexpected forms. Titan's tail wagged. You're my angel boy. Always have been. Always will be. The dog pressed closer. And Jack Morrison, survivor, rescuer, son, brother, friend, finally understood what Eleanor had been trying to teach him all along. That family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. It's about who refuses to give up even when giving up would be easier. He had spent years running from the world, convinced that his survival was meaningless. But Eleanor had shown him the truth. Survival is never meaningless. It's always the beginning of something. A purpose, a mission, a chance to help someone else survive. And that chance, that sacred, precious chance, was the only gift that really mattered. Jack stood and walked inside, Titan at his heels. Behind him, the stars blazed eternal. Ahead of him, his family waited. And somewhere in the vast, complicated, beautiful world, an elderly couple needed help. Tomorrow he would find them. Tomorrow he would save them. Tomorrow the cycle would begin again. Because that was his purpose now. That was his mission. That was the legacy Eleanor Brennan had left behind. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by who refuses to leave when the world grows cold. And Jack Morrison would never leave. Not now. Not ever. Because showing up is not just what heroes do. It's what love does. It's what family does. It's what we all can do if we simply choose to try. The end.